Hey beautiful souls, welcome to my YouTube channel. I am Danny. I am a Reiki master teacher and I help people shift into empowerment and recognize where they are giving their power away. Where are we leaking our divine energy? So today we're going to talk about three things, three reminders that all you empaths, starseeds, healers, light workers, shadow workers, intuitives, so many labels, need to remember about the burden of responsibility. Okay, so real quick, before we dive in to those three remembrances of the burden of responsibility that we need to know right now, that we need to be mindful of, let's take a moment to just talk a little bit about responsibility in the state of the world. So if you're on this channel, if you're watching this content, then you feel called in some way to shift your internal state so that it can be reflected in our external reality, right? You feel called in some way. You are here to help shift from one world to another, right? We're hoping to anchor in that peace and that balance. Well, obviously right now we're kind of going through the Great Reset, if you will, those massive shifts on a collective scale. And there's a lot of pressure of responsibility in several ways. So as the tower, right, like we've kind of reached that tipping point and the tower is falling, or we're very aware the social structures aren't working anymore, and as they fall away, us that are here to have this shift are feeling an immense pressure of responsibility. Or you may. If you're not, then awesome. So, the responsibilities are kind of contradicting right now, right? On one polarity, we have this huge responsibility to save the people from illness and pain and death. And then on the other side of this polarity, we're having this immense pressure of responsibility to save people from having their freedoms taken away, right? So they're kind of these extremes. And now we know as people that are in these roles as beings that feel like they anchored here on earth to anchor in this shift in this new world, to anchor in the light, we feel immense responsibility to prevent illness, pain, suffering, and loss of freedom, right? So we're kind of hit with this massive internal pull of separation, and then all this pressure, right? There's all this pressure to do the things. We have to do the things to save humanity. Kind of coming into that, what do they call that? Savior mentality or whatnot. So it's really dense right now for people like us. It has been, like, there's no doubt that all of you all witnessed the density last year, and we will continue to witness this density. So let's talk about three things that we need to remember about the burden of responsibility. Number one, it's not your responsibility, it's your choice. It's not your responsibility, it's your choice. So, yesterday I was at an event and I got to have a really good discussion with a friend, and he'd been having all this information come in his personal life and noticing these patterns of it's his choice. Simultaneously, I had been having all of these patterns and information coming in about the burden of responsibility. So when I'm talking to him, kind of combining the two here, but yet remembering that responsibility, that term in itself on an energetic form, let's think about that. When you're hearing me say responsibility, how do you feel? Do you immediately kind of tighten up? Do you get a little anxiety? Do the shoulders tense? Does the stomach and the solar plexus kind of get some butterflies in it? The term responsibility is dense. And the term choice is liberating. So take a moment to just think about that. When you tell yourself that it's not your responsibility, it's your choice, does it feel lighter automatically in your body? Do you feel an energy shift? So are we giving our power away to thinking that it's our responsibility to help people shift? It's our responsibility to ensure that the planet survives. It's our responsibility to bring peace and harmony to the planet. It's our responsibility to wake people up. It's our responsibility to help others heal. How does that make you feel? Already personally, it can just feel really tight. I feel dense. I feel constricted. I feel a lot of pressure. What if we reframe that and talked about it was my choice to come here during this time? It's my choice to live in a way that is balanced, peaceful. It is my choice to dive in to my shadows and acknowledge and move through my blocks, taking them as lessons. It's my choice to live in a harmonic way with nature. It's my choice to live in my passion and encourage others to live in their passion. How'd that shift your energy? Okay, that's the most important thing to remember from here on out. I've been really struggling with this. It's not your responsibility, it's your choice. So let's dive in to number 2, the second thing that we need to remember about the burden of responsibility. Responsibility in itself brings up a lot of inner child wounds, okay, and creative blocks. I don't know how to really get into this one without sharing, being vulnerable and sharing myself a little bit. So 2019, I moved back into my home after being nomadic for a few years. And then 2020, we spent time to kind of renovate that home and sell it. Being in that home just didn't feel in alignment anymore, especially when we'd been used to being nomadic and kind of living more in tune with nature. So taking that leap, we moved back in with my parents for a while until we could kind of get our feet underneath us enough to plant some roots on some land, okay? And then be in that kind of off-grid sustainable way. With that, I was personally brought back into all these inner child wounds. And I noticed the tie of it with responsibility and the tie of that denseness and those wounds to my passion and to the work that I do. So responsibility in itself brings up a lot of inner child wounds. If we look back enough and start looking at the patterns, it probably stems into where we were responsible for our parents' happiness in some way, right? We had to behave this way, do these certain things, our parents would be happy. For a lot of us in this realm, we are caretakers. We are nurturing. We tend to be people pleasers, right? We don't want to disappoint others. We just want them to be happy because we don't want the pain and suffering on the planet anymore. So in acknowledging this, we may have found ourselves in roles where we were younger, where we were doing the caretaking. We were trying to save the mom or the dad or the siblings. Maybe someone was ill, things like that. Maybe in your younger time you were in roles again that were caretaking, like nursing. Nursing was that for me. So responsibility, putting all this responsibility in itself, is bringing up those inner child wounds, and then reminding us of where in our family, with our friends, are we still in that role of the responsibility for their happiness, for their well-being, for their safety, for their health? And then are we reflecting those patterns in the line of work that we're doing right now? And is that pressure of responsibility causing us to run away from our passion? So here we go. So for me, I'm going to share a little personal insight, okay? This may resonate with you, this may not. But for me, I realize that I'm wanting to expand my practice into wanting to get online and find the balance between root and wings, to get out there, to be seen, be heard, to show people what I have to offer, how I can assist. It feels like a lot of responsibility, right? Then you've got all these things to maintain. There's all these things to maintain. I have to hold space. We've got to be there. We've got to develop a connection, right? A relationship. There's all these tasks to go in with it, and creating content and being seen and heard and getting that information out there, right? Getting that value out there. And so personally for me, it was like I was pushing it away and running from it, because in the past, my younger self, so that inner child, right, has taken on responsibility that wasn't theirs to take on, and it brought pain and it brought suffering. So now, repeating that cycle of not allowing myself to show up for myself, to stand in my power, because I'm acting out of that wound of, if I take on this responsibility, it's going to bring pain and suffering. In reality though, this pushing away, this pulling away, is bringing the pain and the suffering, because I'm not really fully stepping into my power, not really fully showing up for myself, not really fully living in the life of purpose and passion that I wish to. So, responsibility, okay? Remember, things we need to remember, as responsibility brings up a lot of inner child wounds. With all this being said, there's going to be those creative blocks, right? So when we're talking about inner child wounds, we're talking about the sacral chakra, and our throat chakra. So having that fear of expressing the self, having that fear of really showing up in that creative state and presenting to the world what you are creating or expressing, what you have to birth and offer. So check out some patterns there. See if you can dive into yourself. If you're struggling with this responsibility, where does that lie in childhood, and how is that being reflected today? The third remembrance that we need to have about responsibility, or the burden of responsibility, is that it brings a lot of our disempowered feminine and masculine energies to the surface. So I kind of touched on this when I talked about my personal experience under number 2. But again, living in these disempowered energies, we essentially repeat that cycle. So when we are empowered, when we're living in the empowered divine masculine and feminine energies, when we're living through balance, sacral and solar plexus energy, when those two are in alignment with each other, we're full of passion. We feel that we're living on purpose. We feel called to take aligned action. We're creative. We nurture that creativity. We are trusting in ourselves. We know ourselves. We know what we feel. We know what we want. We're trusting our intuition, and we're taking the aligned action to go with it. And it's this beautiful balance of force and flow, okay? This beautiful balance of taking action and allowing it to flow and unfold, cultivating it, knowing that you are supporting yourself, knowing that you are showing up for yourself. But with the burden of responsibility instead of choice, so that would be acting in choice, with the burden of responsibility, what we tend to do is shift our energy into that empowered state or disempowered state. So we're living out of the disempowered feminine and masculine energies. So instead of being creative and nurturing and speaking our truth and knowing our worth and knowing what we want and knowing ourselves and taking aligned action, what happens is we begin to not trust ourselves. And then when we begin to not trust ourselves and we're kind of cracking under the pressure, we get real discombobulated. We don't know which way to go. The focus and the clarity leaves. We kind of fall into that state of confusion. We're not able to create and nurture because we're not really taking aligned action, and we're wanting to really either, it becomes this push or pull. We're pushing it away. We're trying to pull everything into us, but without taking the aligned action. So when we live in those disempowered states, we're repeating those childhood wounds, okay, those childhood cycles, instead of making the choice to step out of it. So with this being said, before we hop off here, some things that we can do to help us remember that it's not our responsibility, that it's our choice, is to kind of just plant that seed. Write it on a mirror. I've got mine written all over sticky pads and things right now. Allow yourself to just constantly show yourself and give yourself reminders that it's not your responsibility, it's your choice. Secondly, I know personally for me, when this transpires, when my sacral and my solar get really out of whack, when my feminine and my masculine feel disempowered, then what happens is I'm trying to make it happen, but I don't want it, so I'm pushing it away. So become really aware and just allow yourself to sit for a moment. It's awful. I mean, I've been stirring around in the swamp. It's really hard to allow yourself to just kind of sit in it, but if you can sit and mellow in it, as my friend said the other day, if you can just like roll around in the mud for a while, then you'll kind of start noticing that you don't have to build the ladder out of the pit, that somehow the rocks kind of formulate and you can start stepping up out of it. If you can let go of that control and that responsibility for yourself, and just give yourself a moment. Another couple things you can do after you give yourself that moment to allow your nervous and energy systems to come back into alignment with each other is to take aligned action. So show up for yourself in some way, even though it's terrifying. I signed up for a course that helped trigger me and push me to step into making this video. Allow yourself to make the post, do whatever it is. Allow yourself to sit and be creative, even if something's not coming out of it. Just kind of allow it to flow out and spew out all over the place and try not to judge it. And then something else we can do is, as you're laying in that pit and rolling around in the mud, feeling all the emotions and letting that move through, is allow yourself to work with water. So allowing yourself to take that aligned action is cultivating that fire, and then allowing yourself to experience the emotions and allow the emotions to flow as you wallow around in the mud, is kind of simmering the water a little bit or slowing the water down. So instead of a roar, maybe it starts to become peaceful, and those two energies can balance out. So again, repeating here and tying it back into, it's not your responsibility, it's your choice. And we're all human here. Like I said, I have really been struggling with this. Even some of my friends have been like, I'm worried about you. But this was a healing. It's a good thing. It was something that I needed to go through. And if you're going through this as well, or this is a timeless video, when you find this, if this resonates with you and you're going through it, it's not a bad thing. So don't reinforce that shame on yourself. It's a learning lesson. It's a healing lesson. And you're going to dive to these depths so you can come up stronger into your power. So we all have the ability to make the choice. It's not a burden. We're not tied to it. We're not shackled to it. It's not our responsibility. Let's take that pressure off of ourselves. And remember, we have the choice. We have the choice to keep repeating the pattern. We have the choice to not move forward. We have the choice to move forward. We have the choice to set up some boundaries and let go of the responsibility of making everyone love us or happy or healthy. We can let go of the responsibility of saving the world, and we can make the choice to do it for ourselves and allow choosing that for ourselves to echo out into the reality. Beautiful souls, I hope this helps. Thanks for holding space as I express this as well. I'd really love for you, if this resonated, if this helped, I'd love for you to subscribe to this channel and to share it. Share it with a friend, a family member, a client, someone that you feel like would benefit from this, that's struggling with that burden of responsibility right now. Thank you. It's always a blessing to connect with you. Have a beautiful day.